Hey everybody, it's Sonja Lewis, host of UIO Podcast, the podcast for teenage girls. Yay, that's the one. So today we are going to talk about boundaries, look at it from the perspective of the 5 W's and the 1 H. But before we jump in, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any vlogs. You'll get them as soon as I upload them, and you don't miss any of our podcasts for that matter either. So let's jump in and talk about boundaries, starting with the who. So who needs boundaries anyhow? That's a very good question. But a very quick short answer is everyone actually needs boundaries, from the time that you're born to the time that you're no longer here. Boundaries are very important, and a good example, a good way to look at everybody needing boundaries is, have you ever said, that's just not me, that's just not who I am, when you feel uncomfortable about a situation or you don't want to do something? And also you might have said or heard other people say about someone, that's just the way they are. When someone's been late, or they've been disrespectful of time, or they've broken some sort of boundary or busted someone's boundaries. And this is about who needs boundaries. Even the boundaryless needs boundaries. And so let's talk about what, and then we'll talk about why they need them in the first place. But what are boundaries in the first place? What do they do? What are they? Well, one way to look at boundaries is that they're just a sort of a line in the sand, or sort of a circle around you. It can be physical, it can be virtual, because boundaries can be psychological, they can also be spiritual. But it's all about defining who you are and what you stand for, and what you do and what you don't do, having values and so forth and so on, but being very clear. And jumping right into the why of boundaries. Boundaries give you the freedom to make sure that your no means no. When you know what you stand for, you can be very clear about your no. It also helps you not to overpromise. Ever been in a situation where you really didn't want to do something because that's just not you, and you promised a friend, or a family member that you were going to do it, and you end up really resenting the situation? That is a sure sign that your boundaries are not clear. But having them clear is a very good way to be able to say, no, it's not, I'm just not interested in doing so and so and so forth and so on. And so it's really important to think about the who, the what, the why, and let's look at the where. Where do you need boundaries? Where do you use them? And that is in any situation that you're in. Boundaries are great in situations where there's peer pressure. Boundaries are great in situations where you're dating, because again, they define what you stand for and who you are and what you think and what you want to do. So boundaries are for life, and you can use them anywhere, at school, at home. They are so good at helping you in terms of self-care, taking care of yourself, and really living your best life ever. And so let's talk about when. I think it's pretty clear that the when of boundaries is whenever, from the day that you're born. If you think about it, when you were a baby, if you didn't have boundaries, you likely wouldn't have made it to being a teenager. But we all have to have boundaries, and so you're never too young, you're never too old, you're never too cool, you're never too not so cool. Boundaries are for life. They are whenever, and they really come in handy, particularly during the teenage years. So let's talk about how. How do you get these boundaries? Once you get them, how do you keep them? And this is really key. So as we grow up, we inherit boundaries, we learn boundaries through our parents, through school, but we grow within ourselves and set our own boundaries and come to understand what it is that is important to us. And the way that we keep these boundaries is that we after we come to understand who we are and what we stand for, we do have to understand that we're going to get some sort of resistance. That's the first thing. Getting resistance externally when we have solid boundaries, sometimes our friends get angry, sometimes they use guilt messages. If you were my friend, you would come with me to this party, and so forth and so on. If you really liked me, you wouldn't do so forth and so on. Those are boundary busters. That's what we're going to call them. And when your boundaries are clear and they're solid, you recognize those kind of things. So that's how you keep your boundaries. You recognize them. But of course, another boundary buster is you're going to feel guilty because this is what you've seen as a healthy relationship, and it's really hard to say no. But again, it's recognizing the internal and the external resistance, seeing it for what it is, and being able to stand firm. Your yes is a clear yes, and your no is a clear no. Another way to ensure that you set solid boundaries and you keep your solid boundaries is to practice. You know, if you're not really clear on your boundaries and you really have something that you need to say, you need to do, start small. You know, don't approach a situation that's really hard to put your boundaries, in place. Start small, being able to say no. It might be, I really don't want this piece of candy, or I really don't want to go to this movie tonight, and just say no and firmly mean it. But you have to practice it and socialize and fraternize with like-minded people who have boundaries, and people who make boundaries feel like the norm that they are. And the more you practice having good boundaries, the more you'll be attracted to people who have boundaries, and the more you will feel that it's a norm, and you won't feel as guilty and uncomfortable when you're setting your boundaries. And another thing is to respect the boundaries of others. When your friends say no, they mean no. If they really don't want help, if they really don't want you to do something, then learning to respect other people's boundaries is also affirming for you and your relationship, with that person, and respecting that everyone has boundaries. And so it's really, 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 really key. So at the end of the day, it's all about who you are, knowing what you stand for, knowing why boundaries are very important to you, and understanding that you can use them all the time, anywhere, and practicing how to keep them. So boundaries are for life. Thank you so much for listening to this vlog, and I hope you got some key tips on how to manage your boundaries and how to recognize when things are a bit boundaryless, and to be useful in putting the boundaries in place. So again, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get more exciting vlogs and our podcasts and other things that come up on UIO. So remember, it is for you and about you inside out. And it is UIO. Thank you for listening and watching.